Welcome back. If you're the kind of focused learner who's always looking to spot massive, untapped economic opportunities before the rest of the world catches on, well, you are in exactly the right place. Today's explainer is going to unpack a fascinating, under-the-radar shift happening right now in Africa's medical textile industry. We're talking about a complete transformation here, one that has the potential to totally reshape global healthcare supply chains. Okay, let's jump right in. 90%. Let that sink in for a second. Right now, Africa relies on imports for over 90% of its critical medical textile needs. We're talking about the whole shebang, everything from your basic surgical masks and gowns, all the way up to advanced wound care dressings and implantable fabrics. Almost all of it is shipped in from outside the continent. Now, on the surface, that looks like a massive vulnerability. But as you'll see in just a minute, it is actually a monumental opportunity for investment and local production. You see, that 90% deficit, it isn't a permanent state of affairs. In fact, we are witnessing a massive structural shift happening right now in 2026. As researcher Robert Luzane points out, the continent isn't just sitting back and accepting the status quo anymore. Instead, they're leveraging a really powerful combination of the African Continental Free Trade Area, or AfCFTA, and aggressive new sovereign health policies to localize production. We're literally watching a shift from dependence to self-reliance in real time. So here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with Africa's medical textile boom, then look at market segments and dependency, move into regional hubs and roadblocks, figure out building a profitable facility, and finally we'll wrap up with the Tanzania-Botswana strategy. Part 1. Africa's medical textile boom. To really grasp the scale of what we're talking about here, you have to look at the overall continental textile market. It sits at a massive $39.21 billion. And within that giant pie, medical textiles are absolutely surging. What's kind of wild is that non-woven disposables now account for over 60% of the medical textile volume. Yes, that includes a staggering amount of things like adult diapers and basic masks. It is hands down the fastest growing subsegment. And why is that? Well, rapid urbanization, rising disposable incomes, stricter hygiene standards, and a growing need to manage chronic diseases are all crashing together to create an unprecedented surge in healthcare demand. But the real engine driving this boom is a concept known as sovereign health. It's absolutely crucial to understand this. Post-pandemic, governments basically had a collective realization. They could no longer afford to be at the mercy of global supply chain shocks for life-saving materials. So sovereign health policies are these strategic, government-backed initiatives aimed squarely at reducing import reliance. When you pair those ambitious policies with the barrier-free trade promised by the AfCFTA, you've got the perfect recipe for a massive localization boom. Moving on to Part 2, market segments and dependency. When we break down exactly what makes up this demand, it's the everyday items that completely dominate the volume. Surgical textiles, which are being driven by rising surgical volumes in places like North and South Africa, take up the lion's share at 41%. Right behind that, hygiene products come in at 35%, largely driven by urbanization. The remaining 24% is split evenly between highly specialized products, implantable goods like orthopedic supports, and extracorporeal items, which include things like components for dialysis machines. But here is where we hit a pretty stark reality check. Despite this massive, growing local demand, 85 to 90% of high-tech medical textiles are still sourced from abroad. The heavy hitters supplying this are China, Turkey, India, and the EU. And here's the kicker, the real vulnerability. This demand is incredibly concentrated. Roughly 70% of all those imports flow into just 5 nations: South Africa, Egypt, Nigeria, Morocco, and Algeria. Talk about a glaring gap just waiting to be filled by local industry, right? Which brings us to Part 3, regional hubs and roadblocks. If you look across the continent, the manufacturing landscape right now is, frankly, incredibly uneven. Up in North Africa, countries like Egypt and Morocco are highly advanced. They've got integrated supply chains and are actively exporting surgical and hygiene goods. Down in Southern Africa, places like South Africa and Mauritius are your high-tech specialists. They're making the implantables and technical fabrics. Over in East Africa, it's an emerging market, rapidly scaling up mass production of disposables. But then, look at West and Central Africa. Despite having massive populations and huge demand for basic hygiene products, they remain heavily dependent on imports, and their local production is still very nascent. So what's holding them back? Well, to be completely objective, we have to look at the primary roadblocks. First up, raw materials. Sure, cotton is abundant, but the high-performance synthetics you need for modern medical gear, things like polypropylene and polyester, are severely lacking. Second is energy. Power instability in parts of West Africa acts like a massive tax, adding a punishing 15 to 20% cost premium. And finally, certification. Securing ISO 1345 medical grade approval is technically demanding, and it is brutally expensive for small and medium enterprises. These are very real hurdles, no doubt about it. Part 4. Building a profitable facility. Okay, let's zoom in a bit. If you were to actually walk onto the floor of a brand new medical textile plant, you'd see a very clear 4-step procedural rhythm. Stage 1 is pretreatment. This is where they scour and bleach the raw materials to guarantee absolute absorbency. Stage 2 is fabrication, the actual weaving of gauze or running non-woven lines for modern dressings. Stage 3 is converting and coating, which involved precision slitting and adding high-tech touches like silver-ion antimicrobial coatings. And finally, Stage 4 is sterilization and packaging, ensuring everything is sealed up tight in medical-grade pouches. To make this blueprint even more concrete, let's look at the actual hardware you'd need on the factory floor. You're going to need air jet looms running at high capacity to weave that medical gauze. A continuous bleaching range handles the fabric pretreatment. Then you've got slitting and rolling machines for precision cutting. This is absolutely critical to reduce lint, because in modern wound care, even a microscopic stray fiber can cause a massive infection. An island placer handles the high-speed assembly of those complex multi-layer adhesive dressings. And an EO, or ethylene oxide sterilizer, is non-negotiable for safely sterilizing any heat-sensitive advanced products. All right, time for the hard financial reality. To set up a medium, highly automated line featuring exactly this kind of equipment, the projected capital expenditure, or CapEx, for 2026 sits somewhere between $1.5 million and $3.5 million. And naturally, you can expect that number to climb even higher if you want to integrate advanced hydrocolloid tech or specialized coating capabilities. But here is the massive investment hook, the reason why this is such an incredible opportunity. Once a facility like this is up and running, the profitability projections are fantastic. We're talking staggering gross margins between 45 and 55%, and net margins ranging from 22 to 32%, and that's after taxes and utility costs. What's even more exciting? If manufacturers can tap into local African cotton instead of importing base textiles, they can push their raw material costs down by a further 15 to 20%. The economics here absolutely make sense. And finally, Part 5, the Tanzania-Botswana strategy. So how do we pull all this together and overcome those roadblocks we talked about earlier? The ultimate master plan lies in cross-border synergy. Imagine a strategic partnership pairing Tanzania and Botswana. On one side, Tanzania acts as the primary production hub. Its strengths? Abundant raw cotton and emerging textile parks. Its role is to vertically integrate and pump out high volumes of base gauze and cotton dressings. On the other side, you have Botswana, acting as the specialized finisher. Botswana offers a highly stable business environment and a strong focus on special economic zones. So Botswana imports Tanzania's base textiles, applies the advanced coatings, handles the complex sterile packaging, and manages the export compliance. It's a perfect match. Now, obviously, you don't build a massive ecosystem like this overnight. It takes a very pragmatic, 3-phase approach. Phase 1 focuses on getting those high-volume, basic non-woven and weaving lines running smoothly in Tanzania. Once that's steady, Phase 2 establishes the specialized finishing and sterilization center down in Botswana. And finally, Phase 3 closes the loop by creating shared testing labs and regional procurement hubs for those tricky synthetic materials. Doing this significantly reduces the certification costs for everyone involved and builds a truly resilient continent-wide value chain. We've looked at the data, the machinery, the hard economics, and the overarching strategy. Africa truly stands at a fascinating inflection point. By aligning raw materials, targeted investment, and smart cross-border partnerships, this continent can absolutely convert its massive import dependence into a highly competitive, export-oriented powerhouse. So, the final thought I'll leave you with today is this. As these sovereign health policies accelerate and local factories really begin to hum, will localized manufacturing be the ultimate key to unlocking Africa's long-term health security? It's a massive shift, and one we will certainly be watching closely. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.